Hi, this video is about LLM Progress hitting a wall. Big duh. There's been leaks at OpenAI and other companies about the serious slowdown in progress. But don't take my word for it. Let's hear from Mark Andreessen, one of the most respected Silicon Valley technologists in the world.
And we're in the realm of the hypothetical. And then look, the other thing that's happening, and maybe we'll discuss this on a future show. But the other thing that's happened is, there is this very interesting asymptotic kind of thing that's happening right now, where 2 years ago there was one LLM that was like way out ahead of everybody else's, which was OpenAI's, and sitting here today there's like six that are like on par with that. And interestingly, at least for right now, they're all sort of asymptoting at sort of the same point. They're kind of hitting the same ceiling on capabilities. Now there's lots of smart people in the industry working to break through those ceilings, but sitting here today, if you just looked at the data, if you just looked at the charts of performance over time, what you would say is there's at least a local topping out of capabilities that's happening.
Okay, and this has been hard for a lot of people to admit or accept or hear when it comes to the AI models, and they want to hear that there's explosive growth and that there's all this stuff going on, and it's just up and to the right or whatever direction you are. It's just a straight up exponential. And then there are other people who are maybe like, it's nothing, it's worthless. But the truth is much more nuanced. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about what this really means, what to expect next, how to deal with the increased rate of improvement, and then I'm going to give an update on Project Crazy Interesting Part 3, which is directly relevant to like how you actually use this stuff. And I want to, the point I said before about duh, at the very, very beginning, if you're still with me, I predicted this last year based upon first principles. I'll tell you how I predicted it. And I've been talking about this for quite a bit this year. And I got a lot of shit in comments from a video I shot a couple months ago where I talked about this. And people were saying, how dare you actually basically think for yourself and not just take what Google and OpenAI and the big tech companies say as gospel. And well, I'm just gonna call it like I see it, and I'm not just calling it completely from the sidelines. I'm actually a player in the field that actually uses this technology quite a bit for myself, for R&D, and for our customers at my company. But the reason why I saw this coming was because of when GPT-4 came out. Basically, they had used all the data available to all humans. All right, so and it's not that they had trained their model on all the data; they had cleaned it up quite a bit. But I saw that being essentially a limiting resource on the models themselves. If there's no more new data, or more accurately, the amount of new data isn't increasing as fast as they want to throw it in there, then the models themselves will slow down. They just ran out of data basically, and so that data was a huge part of why they were able to go from GPT-1, 2, 3, and 4 and get such significant progress along the way. Basically, they made a bet on scaling. And then on top of all this, it was like, well, it's not like they're changing the model, the transformer architecture itself. No, it's almost the same 500 lines of code today as it was when Google released their paper 7-8 years ago. And so they've just added more data and more training, more compute, more energy into it. And so you severely cap the growth on one of those resources, and it's like, okay, well, without a major unlock of new technology, I would expect to slow down. And that's what we've seen. And to those of you who are still skeptical of that claim, you can be skeptical all you want. There's a lot of new stuff coming out that is like, there's kind of a group of people who benefit from generating excitement around this. And so they look at like, oh, there's a new model on the leaderboard. Google's now the new king on top. But you look at the numbers and it's like, they have a score of 1,344, and then the next score is 1,340. So they're well within the margin of error. And there's there's probably 10 or 50 other models that are also within the margin of error. This proves my point, but there's been a lot of that where just a little tiny step forward is celebrated as like, oh, things are still moving really fast. No, I expect things to continue to move forward, just much more incrementally than, let's say, GPT-2 to GPT-3 or GPT-3 to GPT-4. That's the point I'm making, and it's specifically the LLM technology itself. There's a lot of other supporting stuff. There's a lot of other ways in which you can use it that will actually continue to progress. I still don't think most people really understand how to use this technology. And so that is where there is a lot of room for growth in my opinion. Again, not in all tech. There's not a slowdown in all tech. Not in all areas of AI, in LLM specifically, and not even in LLM related tech, and not in how to leverage LLMs. Those are not the areas where there's slowdowns. And maybe there's a non-transformer technology that comes out that unlocks things. We are generating new data, but it's kind of polluted to some degree because of AI itself. So, but it's not as fast as they want to use it. So, maybe in 10 years we'll have a, new order of magnitude of data, and maybe that's how long it takes for them to hit new levels for like a GPT-5 to actually be able to come out. That is possible, as much as people don't want to believe it. Again, there's still so much value in just GPT-4, Claude, or whatever the top model is right now today that is being untapped. So this is not as bad. It's not like I'm saying, oh, it's all terrible. How dare you? How dare you talk about cool stuff? So let's dig into a little bit more of some of the things that they talked about in this podcast, because I think it's pretty relevant to this whole point of it. It's not really improving. And one of those is, I've seen people say out there, hey, it's able to self-improve, and based upon this study, and you dig into the study, and it doesn't actually say that. It's not interpreted in my opinion correctly. So let's take a look at again, these are people who are in the know, who invest billions of dollars in the tech industry. You don't have to take my word for it. Let's hear what Mark has to say about self-takeoff AI.
I can't rule anything out. Having said that, we don't know how to make self-takeoff AI. It doesn't exist. And the
Okay, and here is another quote from him that is relevant to this as well.
Yeah, and then Ben, I think it's fair to say, so you agree with this. I don't think we know of a single instance of we don't know of a single instance of an AI, sort of like an LLM that codes or whatever that has created a superior version of itself.
Nope, not yet. Not at all.
Or not at all. Like, not even come up with, I think, a significant advance in ML algorithms. Like, it just literally has not happened.
Okay, so these people are in the know. This is really obvious to me and has been obvious for a while. So hopefully, if you're still with me, you can at least take their word for it. When you hear these sensational arguments elsewhere, these guys are pretty down to earth, even though they're very techno optimists. They have not heard of a single instance where this technology has improved itself. Not even like a small advance. So, not to pour too much cold water on it, but that doesn't mean that there still is an amazing value in this technology that still has been untapped. That is untapped, and I definitely think that there is a lot of that. So let's talk about just broadly speaking, kind of what next. And I want to shoot a whole video on kind of like what to expect in 2025 and beyond. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but I'll kind of give some highlights and give a more well thought out answer to some of this stuff later. But there's amazing things that will come out of LLM technology. So let's be clear that it's not specifically going to be the models themselves necessarily. For example, I think deploying reliable solutions in enterprise and businesses is still yet to really be done to a significant degree. And that, I think that goes back to a lack of understanding of actually how to use this technology to build reliable solutions. And it's something a drum I've been beating on this channel in a variety of different ways. And it is relevant to the slowdown because this is expected. There are limitations to these models that just are not technically overcomable without a very significant change in technology. Now, I could be wrong about that. There could be, certain switches that need to happen, but just there's certain ways in which the model works. It's like, okay, it's predicting the next token based upon a random distribution. That one thing in and of itself, when it runs inference, when it's actually trying to generate a response, has huge implications on what it can and cannot do. And it creates serious limitations. That one thing. And there's all sorts of other things. And so how do you handle that within a business that needs a reliable output when you have randomness in the software that's built in? Not fake randomness, because you can kind of generate random numbers with code, but it's really not random numbers. It's kind of basing it on, it's complicated. It depends on the specifics of it, but it's not really random. This actually injects real randomness into the software itself. I think that what's next is people are going to start realizing to build, and this might not happen next year in 2025. Actually, I don't think it will happen anytime soon. I think it's probably more like 5 years out before it becomes more of a consensus to understand to not build to build non-LLM centric software solutions, where the LLMs are just part of the technology. They're the engine in the car. They aren't the car itself. And then an example of that would be, I think there's going to be a lot of work on very lightweight, fast, and expensive models that you can run and tune yourself. I've seen other people's studies and especially on this, that seems much more promising than let's just build the best model possible, which is, I guess, the best model possible is more interesting than let's build something that it saves a lot of money and is very cost effective to run and very reliable. I think there's a ton of software engineering. There was one guy who was very optimistic about AGI at OpenAI, and he said something that was correct in my opinion, which is there's a lot of grinding out testing and R&D and software engineering that needs to happen. I completely agree. Again, even if the LLM technology completely stalls from this point and there's no improvements in the next 5 years, there's still there's 5+ years worth of software engineering as a species, at least, that we have available to us just with the new technology right today. Maybe a new model paradigm comes out that is not transformer, that doesn't have these same limitations. I wouldn't guess that. I think it's unlikely that that'll happen in like the next 5 years. So much of the money and time and energy is going into LLMs right as they are right now, and I even here's a title for Sam Altman, LOL. There's still a lot of pushback on this very obvious idea that the LLMs are slowing down their rate of improvement, but you have companies like OpenAI and Google and all the big tech companies that have a vested interest in being and dismissing that and saying no, it's going to be great. We're gonna have AGI next year, or we're still going to improve. There's still a lot. It's not about that they don't have stuff to do and that there aren't going to be improvements. That's not the point. The idea and the main point is that there is not like a GPT-5 level. There's not a jump from GPT-4 to GPT-5 that is on the order of 3 to 4 or 2 to 3. That is the point. That there is actually a convergence of kind of the maximum current capabilities of LLMs as a whole. They're running into I wouldn't call it a wall as it would be like a slowly expanding border, to where they are able to improve it, but just not at the just rapid pace that people seem to want to think it is, and seem to interpret data that says one thing and actually means another. And I'm referring specifically to this one. This and many other data like this, where straight lines on a logarithmic scale. Somebody I really respect and that makes some really great content interpreted that as those things will continue. But to me, the real meaning of that data was that you're putting in an exponential amount of resources in order to get a linear result out, and those resources are limited to some degree, especially going back to the training data. So this is the video I took some crap for in the comments. So I expect for OpenAI and big companies where they have a vested interest in Like, especially OpenAI, they are on like a train that's going full speed and they cannot get off of it. They are raising so much money based upon future expectations. There's no other choice. Sam Altman doesn't have a choice. He cannot admit that this is slowed down. He can't do that. He almost has a fiduciary responsibility to not admit the truth. Anyway, the big companies, the big tech companies, that especially the foundational model companies, will continue to pimp that the next thing is coming, the next thing is coming, the next thing is coming. It's going to be amazing. That's basically going to be what they're going to say for the next 3 to 5 years. That is going to happen regardless of where the technology is. They will say these things. They will continue to pimp their technology as the next best thing, whether or not they've made marginal improvements over the last year, or whether or not they've actually made groundbreaking, significant improvements to the core of the technology. I'll even go out on a limb here, and I think that some of these foundational model companies will flop. Especially, I think the most at risk are the ones that are just foundational model companies. So Google is at risk for different reasons, but OpenAI and Anthropic, where there's been billions of dollars invested in it, there is a chance that I would say 5 years from now, that's going to look at one of the biggest investment flops in the history of humanity, in terms of where they invest, not the investments initially, because clearly OpenAI made something amazing and they created something that's a major human accomplishment. But to continue to invest and continue to build beyond what is practical, it seems very inefficient to me. So I'm making a little bit more of a risky prediction here, that I think OpenAI or Anthropic, OpenAI might be looked at as like a great company that started something, but then ultimately did not actually make anything of themselves, and that they might actually have no value or have much less value than people think, like 5 years from now. It's very risky, I would say, to invest in them, because I've talked about this in another video, where you get a threshold where you can solve a problem, and you don't need the next best. You don't need a better model. Even if they were to come out with GPT-5 that's way better than GPT-4, if your use case, if you can solve it with GPT-4, why would you use GPT-5? In fact, you want to use the smallest, least expensive, fast model that you can do to reliably solve, that you can use to reliably solve the problem. On top of Mark Zuckerberg, trying to spoil the pot or ruin the pot for the other foundational model companies, the open source free models will become, will take up more and more of those use cases. Now, I think we'll think of new use cases, so it's not like new foundational models that take us to another level can actually open up doors to new use cases we didn't think were possible. And so it's not a limited pie that we're working with, but the point still stands that you don't need. There's certain models you just don't need. You don't need the best model to do certain things. And once we build the model that makes it to that point, then we don't need the next models, or at least a very large amount of that is unnecessary, and it becomes increasingly wasteful. And despite all that, I do think that OpenAI or some other organization will make the call and say that they have AGI. I don't know if it'll happen next year, 2025, but I think in the next couple of years, somebody's going to make that call, and it's going to be a bit of a false call, but it's going to create a world where other people have to say they have AGI, or they can't get an investment. And so that is a prediction that's kind of going to be a little bit of a clown fiesta. So I expect that to happen as well. Okay, I got a few more that are a bit out there, or that are not common knowledge, and I'll keep an eye out for my 2025 AI predictions video. I guess one more prediction is, hopefully there'll be an increasing disillusionment with the talking points of these big companies as people realize that they're not coming true. At the same time, I'm not super optimistic that will happen. I think even with this, to me, what is super obvious data to the contrary, there's still tons of people who want to believe that it continues to go up and up and up and up, and that it's not stopping, when it's not really reality. So let me move on to giving an update about Project Crazy Interesting. There is a lot of nuance here with regards to setting up an open source model to start on cloud GPUs in order for us to actually run the open source. So one thing, there's so many different versions of the models, and it's not just the model itself. In case you didn't know this, there's different levels of compression to make it smaller so you can run it, that give varying levels of decrease in improvement. And there is a bunch of different requirements that are not really well documented, or at least even some of the documentation hasn't been thoroughly tested. And there's different GPUs, there's different knobs and dials. And so I'm going to share just a real quick overview of us. This is notes from one of the machine learning engineers at my company, who's been put on this to help figure out all the different nuances of the models so we can set it up. And there's different, these are the 4 different quantization levels. And this is the worst one, or the worst quality, but the fastest, lightest one, and this is the highest one. I don't know if there's actually a full level that isn't quantized at all. I don't recall, but this requires approximately 300 gigabytes of video RAM. That's a lot. That is a lot of video RAM. You're not going to be able to run this on your laptop or your PC. This is going to require something on the order of 5 or 6 high-end GPUs, probably at least, and potentially a lot more. So that's why you can't just fit it in your PC. There's no GPUs that would fit into any regular PC with that. You would need a special rig. So this is much more complicated. Fine-tuning requires almost 1,000 gigs of RAM. I guess there's a different kind of fine-tuning. I wonder if this is LoRa, that requires less. And then there's CPU, RAM, and SSD requirements, and they go down here. And these haven't actually been validated fully. In fact, you'll see a test here where this one says it needs around 155 gig of RAM, but he actually ran a test with 100 gigs and was able to get it to work somewhat. So these are probably more like suggested minimum requirements for it to work reasonably well, but there's probably some ways that you can push it. The plan here is actually to start with the smallest and work our way up as best we can to see until we find the lowest model that can do what we need it to do. All right. I'm hoping we don't have to go to this one because that sounds kind of crazy. I'm thinking that we'll probably need the 2 or the 3. So here's a run where he was testing the FPS 16 on one A1 80 gigabyte GPU, and he was actually able to get it up and running. And here's, I'm not going to read all these notes. You can pause the screen if you want to read it in great detail. But here's him doing a variety of different tests of flipping different switches, trying a couple different things, and basically his long story short, his conclusion was, yeah, this was not enough for the FPS 16, the requirements that we started off with, as we're trying to push the limits here. Yeah, like out of memory errors. There's all sorts of different stuff that, again, the documentation, it might actually be kind of low. It depends on the very specific one, because there's so many different versions out there. For example, this is the latest he was working on, Llama 3.1 Nemotron 70B from NVIDIA Instruct HF, and trying to get at least the 4-bit quantization up. So that's what he's been working on for a little bit now, and I think I think it is. He sent me a message today saying it is up and running, so that we can actually use it and call it going forward to try to run some tests. We are doing some research, and if you know of any good research on the different quantization, let me know. The problem is that, like, new models come out so frequently and there's so many different versions that I don't think there's really good data on, like, how much worse is 8-bit to 4-bit? How much worse is 16-bit to 8-bit? You know, how much worse is from 32 to 16? Like, maybe you get, there's an inflection point where 32 to 16 is not bad. It really doesn't change much, but 16 to 8 is terrible. And that's the kind of line that we're trying to find to where we can actually create something. This is non-trivial. We do need an open source model so that we can fine tune it for these specific mind amalgams, essentially. And if you have any ideas for personalities that you'd like to put into the pot to mix around in some of our tests, definitely put a comment below. Tend to like kind of like the happy fun people, but you could put like Genghis Khan in there or something, and I think that would be interesting. So still working on, I'm checking out some of my old code on long-term memory. It's really funny. I saw this video about like, we're gonna have memory in 2025 from some of the big companies. It's like, you can make that now. It's like there's other people who've done this. It's really not even that complicated with a vector database, at least the kind of the basic version of long-term memory. So I'm going to be testing the latest code, and there's some updates that I think probably need to be made, because the way that I built long-term memory, there's some nuance. It's using metadata. There's different forms of the memory. You have a part of the memory that I call system message injects that I'll cover at another time. That is a bit different than the actual memory itself. And then usually the way we use it is there's kind of different buckets of the memory that you use in different ways in different places. So also worked on Twitter, basic interactions, like just how to actually have a bot do stuff on Twitter. I'm not going to cover that in detail on this channel because that's just not really the main point of this channel. It's about how to use AI. It's not about how to build a Twitter bot. And it's kind of trivial by comparison to what I'm actually doing with the AI. So for example, I am going to cover kind of the Twitter strategy and planning modules. Basically, how does the entity decide what to do? And this is going to be like a regular thing. I think it's probably going to be like a daily strategy and planning session that it does, where it updates its plans and makes a schedule and strategizes what it'll do. And then there's going to be a ton of different testing on mind amalgams. So I'm actually kind of working on gathering some of that data there. So that's what I've got for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you're still with me, please like and subscribe. I do try to put a lot of time and energy into these videos, and just pay me back with a like or a subscribe. I appreciate that, because I think that this is going to, especially this project, crazy interesting as we get a little bit further into it and we actually start putting this out on Twitter. I think it'll get pretty interesting. So thank you very much. Let me know if you have any questions or thoughts or comments, be they good or bad. I'm happy to have a discussion if you think I'm an idiot or whatever, below, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.